Now let's look at savings and interest from a savings standpoint. In this scenario, remember, if you've expanded the savings comparison, any available cash and cash flow is assumed to always go into the savings and interest account. The mortgage itself would pay off at its normal term with no outside sort of help or intervention from the actual available cash and cash flow. So in other words, if I'm looking at the prepayment column as we have before, any extra cash and cash flow is being applied immediately towards that debt first. And only after that debt is paid off will the savings be applied. But let's say that I slide this to a 15-year time frame. Now, over a 15-year time frame, when we looked at the prepayment example, we noticed that there was just a little bit of cash starting to come in because these loans are paying off. Let's actually go to about 13 years, which is when these mortgages would be able to be paid off. This is how early they could be paid off with the savings. And the difference here is it's saying, how much cash do I need to be able to pay off that liability? Well, after 13 years, you'll notice I owe 97 in this one, 140 in this one, and 53 in this one. But all my cash and cash flow is going into my savings and interest account. So this would be anyone who has got a mortgage or a different mortgage and wants to save the $200 or $300 a month that's coming from the refi. They want to put that in an investment account, and they want to do that at 6%. This is showing how much is growing inside of that actual investment account. And you'll notice here that there's $43,517, but they still owe 53. Here they owe 132. They still owe 140. So let me move it over one more year to 14 years. And 14 years divided by 12 is going to be right in that 162 month range. And you'll notice now in this particular year, in year 14, the mortgage balance is 34,522. They still owe 34,522. They can choose to pay it off because their savings account balance has now exceeded the amount that was here, the 34,522. In this scenario, you'll notice in the same year, their savings balance now exceeds their mortgage balance, and they could be debt-free if they want to. But you'll notice that the equity difference here, 219 versus 302 versus 299, is taking the house value minus the mortgage liabilities and other liabilities and adding any savings. And it's saying the equity here is 219. The equity here is 302. Because the house value maybe is a little bit lower, in this particular transaction a client was buying a smaller house, the mortgage liabilities are higher, 127,433, but they've been able to take that cash flow from buying the smaller house and save it, and it's accumulated to 145,217. So which of these is more efficient? And this is more efficient by a month, and you can see the difference is almost negligible, 302 versus 299. But either way, I can see a pretty significant difference over the current equity they'd have in their current scenario if that's what they're concerned about. When you expand the prepayment scenario, and let's go out now just to 30 years and magnify this a little bit more, because we see there's not much of a difference after 15 years, but I can go out the full 30, and you'll notice at this point, this mortgage would have been paid off. So at that point, that savings is going to start going into that savings account. Here it's also going into the savings account, continue to compound, and here it's compounding. When we get out to a 30-year time frame, 988 versus 962, we can actually see that you've got a 287 wealth impact versus 261. So even though there's only a month difference here, that little bit of difference over time starts to magnify because, as we say, all problems and opportunities compound over time. So the savings and interest is just a wonderful way for you to be able to look at what's actually happening in this scenario where a client is choosing to have their money grow in a side fund. How quickly can they be debt-free? And I can compare that to the prepayment option, or I can simply look at that as an alternative way to getting debt-free if that's what I'd like to do.